Here's toss-up 1. A controversial 1983 book by Pietro Redondi claimed that this man angered many by teaching the theories of Democritus. He wrote a text in which the neutral layman Sagredo converses with an academician named Salviati. Robert
Galileo.
Yes. Pretend. Here's your bonus. According to Bertrand's theorem, only two forces of this type have the property that all bound orbits are also closed orbits. For example, teach, identify this type of force that depends only on the distance between objects and points along the line joining them. The gravitational force and the Coulomb force are examples of this type of force. Answer.
Transverse.
Central force. The gravitational force and the Coulomb force are both central forces whose magnitude varies with this power of the distance.
Square. Square.
Answer?
Square.
No, negative second power.
Oh.
In two-body central force problems, this vector, symbolized A, is a constant of the motion. This vector equals the momentum cross angular momentum minus mkr hat, where k is a constant describing the strength of the force. Answer. Laplace-Runge lens vector, or LRL vector. So that is 0 on the bonus. Toss-up 2. A method for modeling real mixtures is the regular solution approximation in which this quantity is set equal to RT times the product of component mole fractions times the dimensionless constant beta. This thermodynamic potential is minimized at constant entropy and pressure. The Joule-Thomson coefficient is equal to...
Enthalpy?
Yes. Bonus. A painter who worked in this style later used lines whose colors were inspired by Egyptian art to create her Ka and Ra series. For example, H named this art movement whose members included Bridget Riley. Many of its paintings, such as Riley's Movement in Squares, are designed to give the viewer an illusion of motion or images that do not exist. Answer. Op art. Many of Riley's paintings, including several untitled entries in her Fragments series, use only these two colors. Combinations of these two colors are present in monochrome paintings. This artist's Optophone 1 may be a precursor to op art. This French cubist promoted the works of Man Ray and Marcel Duchamp in his magazine 391, inspired by Alfred Stieglitz's periodical 291. Francis Picabia. 10. Close game. Toss-up 3. Insisting on the centrality of intellectual freedom, this essay cites at length Arthur Quiller Couch's argument that the poor poet has not in these days, nor has had for 200 years, a dog's chance. In an extended metaphor at the beginning of this essay, the narrator lowers her line of thought into the stream and catches a little fish of an idea.
A room of one's own?
Yes.
Cool. Nice. Can you get that on the pronoun? Yeah.
While at the high place of Pisgah, this man makes prophecies blessing Israel, much to Balak's anger. For 10 points each, named this prophet whom the king of Moab brought in to curse the Israelites. While riding to meet Balak, his donkey is given the power to speak and complains about this man's treatment.
Yes, Balaam?
Yes. Balaam's story is mostly recorded in this Old Testament book that follows Leviticus. As its name suggests, it contains a lot of census information. The book of Revelation condemns this city in modern-day Turkey for following Balaam's teachings and choosing sexual sin. Part of the 7 churches of Asia, this city was where Antipas was martyred and Galen worked in its Asclepium.
Galen of...
that's an old city in Turkey. That's one of the 7.
Answer.
Ephesus.
Pergamon.
Yeah.
20.
Yeah.
Toss-up 4. Adolph Oakes coined a slogan for a business that he owned in this industry and...
Newspaper?
Yes.
What's the slogan? All the news newspapers.
And here is your bonus. One of these types of buildings almost catches on fire due to Engstrand's carelessness. For 10 points each, what type of building is named in honor of the deceased Captain Alving, but was actually only built by his widow to deplete Alving's money so that his son Oswald would gain no inheritance?
An orphanage.
Yes. In the play in which Miss Alving and Oswald appear in, Ghosts, Oswald is suffering from this disease. At the end of the play, Oswald wishes to die and to end his suffering from this disease. Ghost is a play by this Norwegian author of A Doll's House. 30. 5. After this man was given a cup worth 50 pounds at Peterborough Abbey, he refused to accept the gift unless his friend was given an equal gift. In the Boulogne Agreement, nobles demanded that this king exile the first Earl of Cornwall, who eventually returned and was executed by a group of...
Edward II?
Yes.
Cool. Nice.
Okay, Peter Gibbs.
Yeah, Peter Gibson.
Bonus, this woodwind instrument overblows at the 12th, and its lower chalumeau register is separated from its upper register by the break. For 10 points each, name this single-reed instrument. Mozart paired it with the viola and piano in his Kegelstadt trio, and his final concerto in A minor was written for one of these instruments with an extended lower range.
Yeah, clarinet.
Mozart's clarinet concerto and clarinet quintet were written for this Austrian virtuoso who also played the basset horn.
Stop it.
Yeah. The modern system of clarinet fingering was developed by Hyacinthe Closet and named in tribute of this man, who developed a similar system for the flute.
Wait, who did like Quantz did it?
Answer?
Quantz.
No. This is Theobald Böhm.
Yeah,
20.
Yeah.
Toss-up 6. A method of solving partial differential equations is to construct curves of this name that combine to form an integral surface. This adjective applies to polynomials created from recurrence relations whose roots can be used to find explicit formulas for the sequence's terms. A property of this name for a ring is equal to the number of times that 1 must be added to itself to obtain 0. This kind of polynomial is equal to the determinant of a matrix minus the variable times the identity matrix. A quantity of this name is an invariant for a topological surface, which for a polyhedron is equal to vertices plus...
Characteristic.
Yes. This book discusses the interruption of a time of blissful uterine life. 10 points each. Name this 1924 book by an Austrian psychoanalyst. It claims that male homosexuality is caused by men abhorring the female genitals.
What's the common thing?
Answer. The trauma of birth. This psychologist wrote Inhibitions, Symptoms, and Anxiety in response to Otto Ranke's The Trauma of Birth. He wrote The Interpretation of Dreams.
Freud.
Carl Rogers claimed to be infected with Rankian ideas, which he said helped him pioneer this type of psychotherapy that requires the therapist to give the patient unconditional positive regard.
Yeah. Patient-centered.
I have client-centered or person-centered. 10 points. 7. This economist was a longtime proponent of uniform price auctions for treasury bond sales rather than multiple price auctions, though his viewpoint was largely invalidated by empirical studies conducted in the 1990s. This economist put forth an early explanation of the correlation between increased risk-taking and increased wealth in a utility function that he co-names with Leonard Savage. This man theorized that spending patterns are based on an individual's expected income over their lifetime in the permanent...
Friedman?
Yep.
Yeah.
This poem claims the violence of beast on beast is read as natural law, but upright man seeks his divinity by inflicting pain. For 10 points each, name this poem that opens by declaring that a wind is ruffling the tawny pelt of the tidal continent. Answer. A Far Cry from Africa.
Yeah.
This native of St. Lucia wrote A Far Cry from Africa and the Homer-inspired epic Omeros.
Walcott.
In the final line of A Far Cry from Africa, the autobiographical speaker asks, how can I turn from Africa and do this action?
Live.
For 20. Toss of 8. A poet with this surname wrote about flowers that had forgotten their eastern origin and became decent and reticent in America in a poem that describes them as false blue, white, purple. That author with this surname reacted to the death of her fiancé, Lord Hartwell, by writing a poem that ends by asking, Christ, what are the title objects for? An Imagist poet with this last name wrote lilacs and patterns.
Lol.
Yeah. Bonus. Along with Hector Peterson, a youth with this name was the first to be killed in the 1976 Soweto uprising, for 10 points each. Give this name, which was also the first name of the president of an African country from 1961 to 1994. That man invented the name of his newly independent country after seeing the name of a lake on an old French map and liking the sound.
So like maybe like that could be like Malawi, that could be Hastings.
Oh yeah, Hastings.
Answer?
Oh, Hastings?
Hastings Banda was the first president of this African country, which was formerly known as Nyasaland.
Yes, Malawi. Good job.
Yeah. The Soweto uprising occurred in this country, which at the time was still dominated by apartheid policies.
South Africa.
Yeah. 30. Toss up 9. A portrait of this person in a silver-bordered blue dress was sent to Leopold I in Vienna, where it remains today. This person gazes at two figures only visible in a mirror next to a self-portrait of the artist, who wears the insignia of the Order of St. James. The dachshund lump replaces the mastiff that lies...
Charles first.
Nope. Lies to the left of this person in a version of the painting she appears in by Pablo Picasso. Juan del Mazo painted this person in a mourning dress after the death of her father, Philip IV. In a 1656 painting, a kneeling woman presents a red cup to this person, who is accompanied by 2 dwarves and 3 other attendants. For 10 points, name this infanta whose maids of honor are painted in Diego Velázquez's Las Meninas.
Infanta Margarita?
Yeah.
Yes, I have this like 100 portraits of Charles
Okay. Bonus. You're walking from Trojan to Athens, answer the following about things that will try to kill you for 10 points each. Actually, nothing will, because this hero cleared the road. This hero became king of Athens after he killed the Minotaur, but forgot to swap his black sails for white ones.
Theseus.
Thanks to Theseus killing this nightmare host in a poetic manner, you won't get either stretched to death or hacked up to fit this bandit's namesake bed.
Procrustes.
You also won't get pulverized by this lame clubman and son of Hephaestus, who used to fatally tenderize passers-by until Theseus beat him to death with his own club. Answer. Periphetes. 20. And toss up 10. A section of this opera opens with the line, "Would it get some wind for the sailboat?" It ends with a soothing story written by Samuel M. Johnson and features several texts by Christopher Knowles.
Monster on the Beach.
Yeah. Bonus. This woman posed nude in a famous photograph that showed her astride an imitation plywood chair. For 10 points each, name this woman a model and former showgirl who was introduced by Stephen Ward to the Secretary of State for War, with whom she had a brief affair that turned scandalous after it was publicly revealed. Answer. Christine Keeler. This man was the aforementioned Secretary of State for War. After his namesake affair became public, he was forced to resign from the Macmillan ministry.
Profumo.
The Profumo affair took place at the beginning of this decade. Further muddying the waters was the fact that Keeler was also involved with Yevgeny Ivanov, a naval attaché at the Soviet embassy.
50s.
60s. I have a score of 145 for Illinois A and 120 for Ohio A.
So what do we got coming up?
I thought you were at the end. My bad.
Yeah, okay. Okay. Keep it up. Very good job on that one.
I hope it was science and I can have got science stuff.
Alright, ready guys?
That's important.
Toss up 11. This person is actually the title character of the novel The Prince of India by Lew Wallace, in which he helps bring about the fall of Constantinople. He is frequently claimed to be a shoemaker. A Roger of Wendover story gave him the specific name Cartaphilus. Legends about this person intensified after a 17th century pamphlet in which he, under the name Ahasuerus...
Prester John?
Nope. Under the name Ahasuerus, met a bishop at a church in Hamburg and appeared repentant. An early story about this person claims he cruelly hit a prisoner and shouted, "Go on quicker," only to be told, "Thou shalt go on until the last day." For 10 points, name this legendary man, possibly a servant of Pilate, who taunted Jesus on the ladder's way to his crucifixion and was thus cursed to walk the earth until the second coming.
The Wandering Jew.
Yep.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yes.
Bonus. Conduction defects in one of these structures may be indicated by a supraventricular rhythm, a prolonged bunny ears QRS complex, and a terminal R wave seen in lead V1. For 10 points each, name these fascicles that diverge from a namesake region and conduct electricity to the Purkinje fibers.
That was so messy. Yeah. SA node.
Bundle branches. Another cause of an extended QRS complex is premature ventricular contraction, which occurs when a cardiac action potential is generated in the Purkinje fibers instead of in this collection of pacemaker cells.
Bundle of his.
Yeah.
Bundle of his.
Sinoatrial node. Phase 4 of the cardiac AP is partly maintained by a leak current of this ion that decreases as the cells depolarize. The RMP is also kept around this ion's reversal potential by namesake pumps that exchange 3 sodium ions for 2 of this ion.
Potassium.
Yep. Toss-up 12. A ruler of this dynasty was strangled with a scarf after the poison he requested could not be found in time. Numerous soldiers of this dynasty were killed when Ulji Munduk opened a dam to drown them. This dynasty had success against Champa's war elephants but was forced to withdraw due to malaria. Its forces were routed at the Battle of the Salsu River, which helped... Yeah.
Good.
Bonus, this character chastises his employer for carelessly leading on Farmer Boldwood by sending him a valentine with the words, "Marry me." For 10 points each, name this shepherd who was rejected by Bathsheba Everdeen at the start of an 1874 novel, and as the third man in her life alongside Boldwood and Sergeant Troy. Gabriel Oak is the protagonist of Far from the Madding Crowd, a novel by this author of Jude the Obscure. While married to Sergeant Troy, Bathsheba is horrified to find this object inside of Fanny Robin's coffin, despite Gabriel's repeated lies to cover up its existence.
It's like a child. Like a child.
Yeah.
Cool.
30.
Good 30, man. Good job.
Dead child. That'd be much easier.
Okay, toss-up 13.
Clear?
Yeah. In 2004, the author of this play wrote a prequel in which one of its characters is slapped across the face by his wife, Anne. This play is dedicated to its author's lover, William Flanagan, and focuses on a character who has 2 parakeets, one for each of his daughters. Yes. Answer the following about the mythology of the Hittites for 10 points each. The best-known Mugawar, or Hittite invocation, attempts to entice the fertility god Telipinu to return, since his absence, like that of Demeter, causes one of these events.
Winter, right?
Yeah.
Winter.
A famine.
Oh.
Nobody knows why Telipinu left in the first place, but we do know that he's annoyed after being found by one of these animals, to which Virgil compared the Carthaginians under Dido. Book 4 of Virgil's Georgics is about these small animals.
Oh yeah, that's right. Bees.
The Hittite text, Kingship in Heaven, tells of this god overthrowing his father, the sky god Anu. After this god bites off Anu's genitals, this being becomes pregnant and gives birth to Teshub, the storm god, who eventually overthrows him.
I don't know. I'm not sure. Yeah, if you have a better guess, go for it.
Marduk.
Kumarbi. 10.
Sorry, repeat that first part again for me.
What's that?
Would you repeat the first part?
The text of it?
Yes.
Answer the following about the mythology of the Hittites. The best-known Mugawar or Hittite invocation attempts to entice the fertility god Telipinu to return, since his absence, like that of Demeter, causes one of these events.
I'm going to protest that.
Okay. I'll note it down, and you said winter.
Thanks.
Alright, so 10 points for now on that bonus. Toss up 14. This property can be calculated for an ideal gas using Sutherland's formula.
Viscosity.
Yes. Bonus. A group of 4 counties, collectively called Se-Yup, sit at the mouth of this river and was the source of many 19th century immigrants to North America. For 10 points each, name this river whose delta is home to a booming economic zone that encompasses Shenzhen, Hong Kong, and Macau.
Pearl River.
Yes. The immigrants from Se-Yup spoke Tai Chinese, a dialect of this branch of Chinese named after the city of Guangzhou. Speakers of this branch of Chinese opposed Beijing's attempts to impose Mandarin on Guangdong province and Hong Kong.
Cantonese.
This is the most widespread dialect of Southeast China's Min language group. Originally from South Fujian province, it is the basis for Taiwanese and is the most common dialect among the Chinese communities of Southeast Asia. Answer.
Shen.
What?
Shen.
Hokkien.
I lived in a city in which that was spoken.
So 20 points. Okay.
Hold on, for that last one, would a moist hotel have been acceptable?
I will prompt you on Amoy, or anti-prompt you on Amoy.
Cool.
Toss up 15. Composer and type of piece required. Elizabeth Sprague Coolidge commissioned the 5th of these pieces, whose allegro vivace finale is interrupted by 2 instruments laconically playing the same melody, a semitone apart, in A and B flat. That piece's unpaired central movement is a scherzo featuring a 4+2+3 rhythm marked alla bulgarese. All 4 movements of the last of these pieces have a slow mesto introduction. The 4th of these pieces uses the arch form favored by its composer, and its 4th movement makes heavy use of its composer's namesake snap pizzicato. Nope. That piece was first performed in 1929 in Budapest. For 10 points, identify these 6 chamber pieces by the Hungarian composer of music for strings, percussion, and celesta, and concerto for orchestra.
Bartok string quartets?
Yes.
Yeah, I knew that, sorry. Just another genre. It's fine.
Alright, bonus. The name of this period was an alternate title of the German film Marianne and Julian, for 10 points each. Name this period that ended around 1982. During it, General James Dozier was kidnapped and 17 people were killed when a bomb exploded at the National Agrarian Bank.
So it's the Troubles. It's the Troubles.
Years of Lead. The Years of Lead took place in this European country, once led by Benito Mussolini.
Italy.
During the Years of Lead, Aldo Moro, a former Italian prime minister, was kidnapped and killed. Moro was a leader of this party, the largest party in the Italian parliament until 1994.
Christian Democrats.
Yeah. So 20. Toss up 16. Right now the score is 195-200, and there's a protest on one bonus part. 16. This specific policy was called the third rail of journalism by frequent critic Ethan Gutman. The newspaper Epoch Times was primarily formed to raise international awareness of this policy, which was the subject of the Kilgore-Mattis report. It is primarily implemented by the 610 office. This specific policy led to the court case Doe v. Cisco Systems, Inc., in which victims sued Cisco for helping to create the Golden Shield. It was escalated after a 2001 incident in which 5 people set themselves on fire, a possibly staged incident that led the public to view a group as dangerous. Some observers have claimed that this policy sustains...
Like the suppression of Falun Gong?
Yes.
There was a CEO task on that.
Yes!
Yeah, there was a
Bonus.
task on that.
David Ruggles, acting as secretary of the New York Committee of Vigilance, once helped prosecute a sea captain for committing this crime. For 10 points each, identify this crime prevalent in the early 19th century U.S. A book about this crime described men such as lumber mill owner William Prince Ford and victim Solomon Northup.
Like kidnapping to return to slavery. Kidnapping to return someone to slavery?
Yes.
Yeah. Cool. Okay.
Northup spent this many years in slavery.
Yeah.
This
12 years of slavery.
Yes, this city was nicknamed the Fugitive Gibraltar because of the many slaves who found asylum there, although Herman Melville labeled it a queer place. The Ernestina is on display at this city's whaling museum.
Nantucket, probably?
New Bedford is a whaling thing too. Go with yours actually.
Nantucket?
New Bedford.
Oh, yes. Sorry.
I should have been with you. That's better.
20 on the bonus. 17. In 2013, this company's chief scientist Ian Gibbons committed suicide. Until 2015, this company's board of directors included former Secretary of State George Shultz, whose grandson Tyler resigned from this company after telling regulators about problems in its signature product. In 2016, those revelations caused Forbes to drop the net worth of this company's CEO to 0. Proficiency test invalidated 2 years of results produced by this company's Edison machines, which it...
Like Theranos?
Yes.
Cool. Cool and good.
And your bonus. A character in this story shoots himself and leaves a 2 of clubs pinned to a tree above his head, for 10 points each. Name the story in which John Oakhurst, Mother Shipton, and Uncle Billy are among the title group of people who are exiled from a western town and become trapped in a raging snowstorm.
The Outcasts of Poker Flat.
This author wrote both The Outcasts of Poker Flat and The Luck of Roaring Camp for the magazine Overland Monthly.
Heart.
Yes. In a heart story, sometimes known as Plain Language from Truthful James, the character playing cards with James and the amusingly named Bill Nye is one of these people. That character turns out to be a cheat.
Yeah. Chinese version.
The Chinese immigrant, yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I'm out.
Okay.
Probably more for last week.
30 points on that bonus.
What's the score?
What?
Oh, do you have the score?
Yes. 265, 200.
Okay, yeah, we need one more last week.
Yeah. Alright, we can do that.
One of them is going to be like...
We should be able to pull one of those.
There's not much we can do with the games actually speaking.
Did you read that Fallen Gun?
Yeah, I did, yeah.
It's
good stuff.
Okay,
It is.
I don't find guys.
You gotta get those organs.
Oh, yeah.
All right, you guys ready?
Yeah.
Okay, the next one is toss-up 18. Let's move from regular wackiness to odd trends in old writing. Oh wait, that's wrong. A character in this play is revealed to be eavesdropping when he yawns while sitting on a stove. In this play, the revelation of a man's death causes another character to exclaim, he spoiled the song. A woman in this play is called a little fool and smacked over the head with the book she was reading, a sentimental novel called Fatal Love. A character in this play sits on a bench and fits old keys, and that husband of Anna observes a raucous card game in this play's cave-like setting.
Lower depths.
Yes.
Good.
Bonus. Sigma and pi star are different different labels for these objects, for 10 points each. Name these objects mathematical representations of electrons delocalized over many atoms. Frontier examples of these objects are analyzed to predict reactivity.
Orbitals.
Prompt.
Molecular orbitals.
In the linear combination of atomic orbitals, or LCAO method, to generate molecular orbitals, these orbitals formed one of the first linearly combined basis sets. They decay exponentially at large radii, have a cusp at r equals 0, unlike Gaussian-type orbitals, and have no nodes.
We'll say Lagrange.
Slater-type orbitals. Hartree defined this parameter for Hartree-Fock orbitals to be the mean radius of the hydrogen electron over the mean radius of the valence shell for the atom in question. This parameter can be approximated by subtracting 0.3 or 0.5 for each other electron in the same shell, and subtracting either 0.85 or 1 for electrons in lower shells.
Shielding.
I have effective nuclear charge, Z effective or Z star.
Alright, so we use one we don't like.
Turn off.
Okay.
That's what you're about to tell us, isn't it?
Did you say what I was about to tell?
I said we're Gucci as long as we don't nag.
Oh, yeah.
How much do we have? 85?
You're up 85.
I have 285, 200.
Okay, so go back.
Please don't.
100 left. Please, Nick.
Does anyone else watch
Videos in pen versus Virginia, or they're all starting not to nag me for spine test.
Alright.
It's a great book.
Toss-up 19. This philosopher argued that Hegel founded an anti-metaphysical tradition and helped turn philosophy into a literary genre in a book that contrasts Nietzsche's and Heidegger's achievements in self-creation with that of Proust. That book by this philosopher described an ideal type of liberal, who fights for moral progress while remaining aware that her beliefs do not correspond to an absolute truth which is out there. In an earlier book...
Wordy.
Yep. Bonus. The Union Station shootout in The Untouchables was inspired by a scene from another film set in this city, for 10 points each. Name the city the site of a 1925 film sequence in which soldiers descend an endless flight of steps to attack a crowd, including a mother pushing a baby carriage and nurse with broken glasses.
Odessa.
The Odessa step sequence appears in this Sergei Eisenstein film that documents a 1905 naval mutiny aboard the title ship.
Battleship Potemkin.
What?
Battleship Potemkin.
Yes. Eisenstein was a director from this country whose other filmmakers include Andrei Tarkovsky.
Russia.
Yep. Last toss-up. Ribeye labeling visualizes the ribbon type of these structures. These structures are formed by a handshake between NLGN and the LNS domain of NRXN. Geoffrin and PSD95 provide scaffolding for two varieties of these structures. Molecules used in them are maintained in a readily releasable pool by certain snares. Their tripartite model includes astrocytes. Some cells induce iPSPs through the axodendritic type of these structures by releasing namesake vesicles carrying GABA. Pruning and long-term potentiation modulate their plasticity. For 10 points, name these structures that form between namesake...
Axon.
Nope. Namesake pre- and post-neuronal processes and pass neurotransmitters through their namesake clefts.
It's an axis.
Yep. Bonus. This theorem was reportedly Gauss's favorite result from number theory. For 10 points each. Identify this theorem that relates the product of the Legendre symbols of P and Q with that of Q and P for odd primes P and Q. This result can be used to decide whether a solution exists to the equation x squared is congruent to A modulo P, where P is an odd prime.
What's the theorem?
For Maslow's
For
Maslow's theorem.
Law of quadratic reciprocity. If C is a quadratic residue modulo P, then C raised to the power P minus 1 over 2 is congruent to 1, according to this man's namesake little theorem. Yes. The law of quadratic reciprocity can be used to prove certain cases of Dirichlet's theorem, which state that this type of sequence contains infinitely many primes if its first term is relatively prime with its common difference.
I'm gonna guess.
Yeah. Wait, arithmetic.
I'm gonna say.
There's arithmetic.
Answer.
Arithmetic.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
20.
Get the dad.
Congratulations.
Good game, everyone, and good luck.
Good job.
Good game, thanks for the apple.
No, I gave you that apple.
Yeah, that wasn't. Oh,
Yeah.
Um,